It's okay. I'll take a look on mine. And got it. Let's just make sure things are live on our end.
I believe we are. I got a note saying we are.
I'll note that we're live. Perfect. Well, then we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the command post for this evening, and welcome to Together We Stand. We are a military family foundation. We honor, recognize, and support military families all across this country. If you're joining us for the very first time tonight, we thank you. This is a web series where we get to showcase military families and talk all about their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs, and really showcase the unique qualities that every military family has going on. With me tonight is going to be the Together We Stand Military Family Advisory Committee. We are a group of, and actually, I'm not even going to tell you what we are because I'm going to defer that to Rick Seymour, who is sitting on my bottom of my screen. He is the CEO of this organization. And to my left, we have Troy Zero, who is the chair of our Military Family Advisory Committee. So thank you guys for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
So Rick, let's go over to you first. So first of all, who are you? What are you doing here?
Well, that's a big question. I don't know if we have enough time to unpack who I am and what I'm doing here.
Like philosophical on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, my name is Rick Seymour, as you stated, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at Together We Stand. What I'm doing here tonight is really, I guess, enjoying my evening with you and Troy and the rest of our Military Family Advisory Committee. You know, I came across this organization about 4 years ago in terms of coming on board from a marketing standpoint. I worked with Steph's father, Rick Eckstein, and her mother, Lillian, and by extension kind of helped form some of the organization from an outside perspective. And 4 years later, I find myself kind of pinching myself at times, leading the organization. But really what I do is get the credit for what a lot of fine folks around me do. Troy being one of them, Steph being one, and I just try to make sure everybody is having a good time along the way, try to do something that's really important, really impactful, which is just to thank our military families across the country for all that they do.
So you started on as CEO of this organization almost exactly 2 years ago. I can't believe it, that it's been 2 years. It's gone by quickly. One of the very first things that you wanted to do with this organization was you had this vision of a military family advisory committee. Why was that? This didn't exist. We had an organization that was 2 years old at this time. Why was this so important to you?
Well, I think I had a vision. I wasn't sure it was necessarily going to be what it is in terms of MFAC as we know it today. But what I did know is that I didn't want to be an organization that made assumptions. And I didn't want to be an organization that, as well-intended as we were at the time and as many organizations are, don't really understand the stakeholders or those that they're looking to connect with. And so that became evident to me the first time that we went to Edmonton as an organization. You dragged me along kicking and screaming, as you know. And you know, we came well-intended, but we were standing at the front of a venue and talking through a microphone about Together We Stand and who we were, and we weren't really letting the families talk about who they were and the challenges that they faced. And so being at a lot of these events over the years and in the philanthropic space, but also the for-profit space, I kind of thought, you know, we should be an organization that sits down at the same level with our constituents and our families and gets to know them and have them kind of educate us, as you and I are not military families, and how better to do that than to try to build a group of individuals who are military families and bring them together and try to act as a bit of a sounding board, a bit of a snapshot from coast to coast to coast, from land, sea, and air, different ages and different genders and backgrounds, to try and be representative of the communities in which they were a part of when either they were serving or still are a part of. So it's all about information gathering. It's all about trying to connect. It's all about trying to be representative as an organization of the community that we're trying to serve at large. And so one of whom we're able to bring on board is retired Chief Warrant Officer Troy Zero, who's here on my camera. And you know, for every member of MFAC that we have, it's just a tremendous honor for us to say that they want to be a part of what we're trying to do. So like I said, if I get to take credit for what MFAC does and what Troy and his team do, But really, it's all about trying to put together a group of people that want to continue to be part of the message and part of the foundation, which is just to, again, honor and thank military families.
Awesome. Thanks. And Troy, welcome today. And you have been chairing the Military Family Advisory Committee for almost an entire year now. And what a job you've been doing. You have collected an amazing group of individuals, Army, Navy, Air Force, spouses, children, active, retired, to really represent, the diversity that the military represents. Tell us really quickly about yourself. You've been on the command post before, but for those of you who haven't met you before, how did you become part of a military family? What does your military family look like?
Yeah, so pretty deep background. First, thanks very much for having me on. It's always an honor to to do anything with the foundation. So again, a little bit about me. My dad served in the military. So as a child, we moved around a lot. We multiple moves, a bunch of different schools. Fast forward to my teenage years, we were living in Germany at the time. I ended up going to a mobile recruiting center, and before I knew it, I'd signed a contract with the military and had moved away. And I remember telling my mom, okay, it's just for 3 years, just until I get my feet underneath me, until I figure out what I want to do. And then fast forward, 33 and a half years later, I retired. But so military child, again, my time in the military, my wife, she's also military, or was also military. She retired the same time I did. We've got 2 fantastic kids who are strong and resilient. And then I remember it was my last experience at my job in Trenton when I became familiar with TWS, and again, just loved the foundation and everything that you stand for. So yeah, that's kind of my background in a nutshell.
Tell me, Troy, because I think you always loved the fact that we were focusing on the family. Why is it that you think that this organization, or families in general, need to be recognized when it comes to the military? Because a lot of the time we do see the veteran being recognized, the active member being recognized. What is it about the families that you think is important?
Yeah, I think, there is absolutely no secret that it without a strong family, without a strong support base, and it really doesn't matter what that family looks like, but without a strong family, military members can't be as effective with their daily jobs. So, having deployed and having stayed home while my wife deployed, I know, that everything that is required of a family to support their military spouse. So, and again, I referred to one of my last jobs in Trenton. Just again, that was a very active, very busy base. Lots of folks away all of the time, and again, it just reaffirmed for me that with a strong family network at home, military members are so much more employable and deployable and effective at what it is they do.
Mm-hmm. And why was it now, when you think about our Military Family Advisory Committee, when we asked you to come on board, what was it about this position that appealed to you? Why, what do you want to bring to the role? And what do you want to see from our Military Family Advisory Committee as chair?
Yeah, so again, that's, I don't want to go too far into it, I guess, for you with all the details. But when I released, I struggled a little bit with the transition, and then a mutual friend who was on, who was supporting the foundation, asked if I'd take an interview with Rick and just consider, coming on as an advisor. And there are lots of organizations out there that support veterans, that support serving members. A lot of great, important organizations, but really for me, there was nothing that I'd seen that supported and honored military families in the same way that TWS does. So again, recognizing the strength of those families, it was really a no-brainer when I met with Rick, and I really began to understand, the core values of the foundation and how you guys planned on moving the foundation forward. I thought this is really something that I can get behind, again, just because there's so much focus on the family.
I want to ask this question of the two of you. Now that we've had a Military Family Advisory Committee advising us for the last year, actually, before I ask this, Rick, tell and anybody who's watching today a little bit about the role that our committee plays. How does it work if you're a part of this committee?
Okay, how does it work? It works well. That's how it works. I guess by extension, so there's a formal meeting once a month that Troy chairs, and there's an agenda that's part of that, and everybody can bring action items to the table or questions. Primarily it's us throwing problems at the group and having them, kind of debunk and figure out how this would play in BC versus Valcartier, and I guess I should say 2 provinces, Quebec and BC, or anywhere in between. But really, they're supposed to be hour meetings. I don't know if we once hit an hour. I think usually they're more like an hour and a half or 2. And then there's various subcommittees that people have been a part of. There's a Francophone subcommittee and a recruitment subcommittee and a veteran subcommittee, and all of, again, from the family lens, right? When we say these words like family, it's military families. It's not military members and their families. It's not veterans and their families. It's military families and that entire ecosystem that encompasses. So, but for me, I mean, it involves texting with Troy on a daily, weekly basis, probably more than he signed up for. Same with Matt, same with Susie, same with Jimmy and Elle and everybody that you'll meet tonight who are just amazing, amazing people. So how it works is really well. What was the second part of that question? Sorry.
I'm curious to know, actually, from both of you, Troy, you had a perspective in the military. I believe you spent most of your time in the Air Force. You retired as the wing chief in Trenton. Rick, you did not serve, and we're very thankful for that, because I know how that would go. What have you learned from our Military Family Advisory Committee? What are some kind of key takeaways that you've learned in the time that you've spent with them?
Chief, you want to start?
Well, again, the one thing that I would say about the MFAC in terms of getting back to the other question and how it works, I think, it's really the foundation. It's Steph and Rick. It's your willingness and your keen interest in making sure that that the foundation is relevant. Real issues are, where we hear the real issues from all levels within the military, and the programs and services that the foundation coordinates and sets up are truly relevant to the men and women and the families of the Canadian Armed Forces, because again, the whole family serves. So
awesome.
I think for I've just learned how strong and how amazing these military families are. I mean, I don't want to sound kind of cliched. I guess I always would have thought that, but just such wonderful people, such strong individuals, and what they've gone through and continue to go through as families. A lot of similar challenges that civilian families go through, but then there's that add-on, there's that next layer that people don't see, and the willingness for all the MFAC members to come to the table and share their stories and experiences and open their lives up to us and be really kind of candid and vulnerable and willing to share and take on hard problems. It's been quite humbling for me, to be honest, and something that I really value a lot in terms of not losing sight of that, and trying to every day trying to honor and uphold that and restore the faith that they've given us in terms of being the leadership of the organization. So I think that's probably what would be my takeaway. It's been a tremendous experience so far, and to continue to grow and evolve with the group, it's really our privilege and our honor.
I think one of the takeaways for myself, and no one's going to ask me because I'm the host, so no one's going to ask, but I'm going to tell you anyways. When I think about our Military Advisory Committee, I think one of the eye-opening things that this committee has taught us is that there is not one solution, and there is not one problem facing or challenge that our military families face. I think so often, if we think about military families and we think about other organizations that support military families, and even civilians who think about military families, they think that everybody looks like one thing. They have this one image of what the military family looks like. And I think what this committee has really helped to educate certainly Rick and myself on, and I think what all of you collectively have shined a light on, is the fact that There is no one size military family, and therefore there is no one size solution. An Army family looks different than a Navy family, which looks different than an Air Force family. If you live on base versus living off base, if you live East Coast versus West Coast, every experience is different. And therefore, when we do come to the table with solutions, and we do come to the table with some programs and services and ways to honor these families, we need to make sure we're taking that diversity and keeping that diversity in mind. And I think that's a tremendous lesson that our Military Family Advisory Committee has managed to play in teaching not only us in the organization, but Canadians, because almost every member of our Military Family Advisory Committee has been on the command post and has showcased their unique story and experience before. So it's really the value that this committee brings can't be overstated.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, Steph. You worded that brilliantly, and that's the fact that there are so many different types of military families and different types of experiences, that really speaks to one of my goals is to make sure that this MFAC is as representative of military families as it can be. So trying to make sure that we have people from varied backgrounds and varied experiences, I think all of that will just lend more credibility to the committee and help the foundation push forward even further.
I think that's brilliant. In the meantime, I'm going to give a shout out to Eleanor and Marianne. Eleanor and Marianne are going to be our guests next. Two amazing individuals who are spouses of individuals who are currently active military members. While they're logging on, and we wait for them. Troy, we have some individuals watching tonight. We have military families watching tonight. We have civilians watching tonight. We are looking to recruit at all times. It's something that's important to us as an organization to make sure that we are considering diversity. If we were looking to bring on new members right now, what are some gaps? What are some issues, or what are some perspectives that perhaps we're missing that we might be looking for should anybody wish to be part of this team?
Yeah, again, I sometimes hesitate to define boxes. I don't like to get into ticking boxes, but I do find when I look at our MFAC right now, we don't necessarily have the East or the West and or the West Coast Navy adequately represented. We have Susie, who's got some naval experience herself, and her husband has some Navy experience. But again, I think that, it's just in making sure that we are as diverse as we can be. I think there's several different groups that, that we're still looking to represent on the committee, but we're getting there. So if somebody is interested, if they can reach out to the foundation, absolutely. Rick and Steph, I can't remember if my email address is up on the foundation, but if they were to email anybody at the foundation, I'm sure that email would make its way to me.
Awesome. So if you are a military family member and you are looking to potentially join part of the committee and learn more about what this committee looks like, feel free to reach out to us. Our individual email addresses are on our profiles on our website at twsfoundation.ca. And if not, you can email us at info@twsfoundation.ca. So I am going to lovingly kick Troy and Rick off the screen because it is time to speak to Marianne and Eleanor. So thanks for joining us today, Troy and Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, hello, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Steph. Hey, Marianne.
The party's now started. We got rid of, the two old boring folk, so we can start getting exciting here. So welcome to Marianne King and welcome to Eleanor Miller, two veterans of our Military Family Advisory Committee. They have been with us since the day that we started this committee and have been a tremendous value added. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight, and thank you so much for everything you're doing for the foundation. Let's start with a pretty basic question. We'll start with you, Marianne. What does your military family look like? How did you become part of a military family?
Yeah, so it's kind of happened all at once. I met my husband when I was in university. We started dating, and I had no experience at all with military families, with people who were in the military where I grew up. There was no active military members in the community, so I had to learn everything really, really fast. Like people say, drinking from a fire hose. Well, I don't know if you can say like there's an equivalent there, but yeah, and it was pretty challenging. Throughout our relationship, we've actually only lived together for about a year, and most of our marriage, I think, so far has been separate. So we're kind of
And
living.
that's why it's working out so well.
To a degree, yeah. But yeah, so it's been kind of tough navigating a military family, even though our military family is kind of split up, as he's on IR out in Wainwright and I stay based in Edmonton.
Tell us what IR means for those who are civilians watching tonight.
I'm gonna let everybody down and say I don't actually know what the meaning of IR is. But oh wait, imposed restriction. There we go. So he lives over there. I live over here.
Elle, what does your military family look like?
Actually quite similar to Marianne's. Like most stories start, there was, a boy in uniform in a bar. But no, I also met Tom when I was in university, many more years ago than Marianne met her husband. At the time, he was a full-time reservist and artilleryman, but it really was like his life's dream to be in the regular army full-time. He was just sort of taking like a leisurely path to get there. So I definitely, when we started dating, knew that, the reservist, who are sort of like part-time volunteer soldiers, was not going to be the way our life was. He wanted to join the regular force. So through various Canadian cities and different iterations, he eventually did. He became a Patricia. So for those of you watching the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry, he chose the 3rd Battalion that's based in Edmonton. It was the only one. They give you 3 picks, and he was like, 3 PPCLI, 3 PPCLI, 3 PPCLI. So the Army doesn't always listen. It's a big green machine, but clearly they knew he was passionate. And so, like Marianne, we've spent a significant portion of our relationship apart. I had a career that kept me in Ottawa for a number of years. He was in Edmonton. We spanned continents. He deployed to Afghanistan twice. I eventually made the move to Edmonton. We're back in Ontario now. He's working at the Royal Military College in Kingston, which is very different than being a frontline unit. So there's been a lot of different experiences along the way. Different careers for me along the way too, as I've had to adapt to what he's doing and where he's based. But it's been a long road, over almost 20 years actually, being part of a military family.
You both have had very similar experiences in that when you became part of a military family, you weren't officially married yet. Mm-hmm. What's it like to be not officially married, but in a very deep partnership with somebody in the military? What are some things that perhaps other military families or civilians don't realize can be complicated about that? I'll go to Marianne first.
Yeah, so I know for me, it was really difficult to find my place in the community, especially feeling kind of like, okay, I'm not a wife, I'm a girlfriend, and we don't live together, and he's somewhere else all the time. So it was difficult to kind of find my footing. But I think the one thing that I took away from that was once I started putting myself out there and just asking the question of like, who is this available for? The answer is usually everybody. So even though my husband is out in Wainwright, there's a really fantastic group of Strathcona spouses out here in Edmonton, and there's a huge group of military spouses in general in Edmonton as well, and they've all been very welcoming, very accommodating, and so has different resources. So it's a challenge sometimes to know exactly where you stand, especially when things aren't on paper, as it were, for the first few years of our relationship. And it can be very difficult to know that as important as he is to me, what's more important, or what it will always take precedence, is the military. And regardless of my needs in the military's eyes, his needs will always sort of change, and they earlier they didn't necessarily include my wants and my needs. So there's definitely an element to sacrifice that I think a lot of people don't fully recognize about military families is that you are truly, as a military family, constantly sacrificing your own wants and your own needs to support your member.
I think that's a huge piece to bring in at some point, and maybe we'll get back to that. Elle, tell us about what it was like for you when you started off your family and it wasn't on paper.
So I would say we spent like the first 10 years of our relationship like not on paper. And what I will say is, you know, again, I'm talking like about a decade ago. You know, I like to think, and I have heard that things have evolved, but he did his first deployment to Afghanistan before we were married. And so there's a couple of like really critical things that they don't tell you. So like you're not considered next of kin at the time, no matter how much you may want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's given over to someone who he doesn't necessarily want. Like he asked for me to be his first point of contact and next of kin. That was what he wanted. And because we weren't official on paper, that request was denied. And it went to, you know, it went to an official family member, you know, despite the fact that we'd been together for a long time and he felt, you know, like official about me. So I have heard that things have, you know, evolved and there's a lot more like choice, you know, when it comes to that sort of thing, because I think that there's a recognition that families look and are extremely diverse. You know, it's not always going to be, you know, serving member spouse, you know, it's going to be serving member and mom, you know, serving member and like best friend, you know, serving member and brother or sister. And I think there's a lot more appreciation for that. And they want to help the serving member, give them access to the support that they need. I think for me, in the careers that I've had, I travel a significant amount. And so I've actually looked for support outside of the military family connection. And so that was challenging in and of itself. You know, when your loved one's deployed and your friends are all civilians, like they don't quite get it. They can be compassionate and they can be, you know, supportive in their own way, but they don't understand, you know, when the phone rings and it's kind of a weird number, and you're just like, gotta go by, like I have to take this sat phone call. They kind of think you're like, well, what the heck, you know, that's so rude. You know, and I think there's a lot of like, you know, long distance relationship type things that are quite challenging, you know, to work out when you're not married. But, you know, I would say it wasn't like some revelation once we made it official and suddenly, you know, the doors opened and they were like, please like enter and let us help you. Yeah, you know, it just became like a very subtle, like, okay, now I'm official, now I'm on all of the documents, like, you know, now I'm, you know, the beneficiary and all of that kind of thing. So that's kind of the legalese. But I will say that the military is evolving on that, and it's nice to see.
And that's what we've been hearing, and it's nice to know that they're changing with and modernizing a little bit in terms of recognizing what a family can look like. Tell me both, I'll go back to Marianne just so we keep taking turns. Why do you think it's important? You know, we do talk about the fact that there's recognition and support out there for the active member and for the veteran. Why do you think it's so important that that the military and that civilians recognize the military and recognize and thank and acknowledge and support the military family?
Well, it's exactly like what Elle said, is that you can have friends who are really supportive and really compassionate and really empathetic to your situation, but they don't fully understand the weight and the gravity of what it's like. And I don't think that I knew going into this how much certain things would affect me. Like I remember sitting in a class in university and having to run out and help my husband pack his bags because 24-hour notice to move turned into 6 hours, turned into 2 hours, and he was getting on a bus and leaving. So I think that in terms of the challenges, it can be really lonely. And it can be really difficult to have to adapt constantly. Like resiliency is great and all, but we're human beings and we can't be resilient 100% of the time. So for me, it's really important that I guess other Canadians, everybody recognizes the fact that there is that sacrifice aspect to it. And it is its own unique experience and its own unique lifestyle. And my dog has decided that it's playtime. So.
I love it. The dog is like star of the show right now. Elle, I want to ask you the same thing. I'm going to put Jimmy and Matt our next runners-up on The Price is Right on notice that they're going to be joining us, and they can log on at any time. Why do you think it's so important that we recognize, support, and honor military families across this country?
So I think nothing happens in a vacuum. You know, every man and woman in uniform has a family that stands beside them and behind them. They're a really integral part of the military experience. And like Marian said, it can be very lonely. You know, a lot of the time, our military is small. You know, there are military families everywhere. And I think that's also really important. Like, you never know who you're speaking to. Like, we have a huge amount of like veterans in this country. We have a lot of reservists, you know, a fair amount of Reg Force members. And so, you know, being curious, being compassionate are all things that go a long way to making military families feel included in the fabric of Canadian society. Because I have to say, a lot of the times, you know, we're a bit on the outside, you know, looking in. So a thank you goes a long way. You know, understanding goes a long way, and knowing that our loved ones couldn't necessarily do, you know, what they do if they're constantly worrying about how we're feeling or how we're doing. And so it's incumbent upon us to try to be as strong and adaptable as possible. But like Marian said, we're only human. And so a thank you goes a long way, and appreciation goes a long way to kind of bolster that.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, Marian and Elle, not only for being here tonight, but for all the work that you do on our Military Family Advisory Committee. You guys have done tremendous amount of work behind the scenes, especially when it comes to our Military Family Military Family Appreciation Day. You guys are hardworking behind the scenes, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for all the work that you do, and thank you for bringing the perspectives that you brought tonight. It was great having you on. Thank you.
Thanks for having you. Bye, guys.
And now, new stars of the show, Matt Anderson, James Colley. How are you doing tonight?
Go ahead, Jamie.
I'm doing good.
I feel like we're like the degenerate ones, like the bad kids in the back of the class. You had to like sprinkle us in the middle so that like.
Don't get me wrong. You two are both the degenerate ones that I've sprinkled into the middle. Like I'm not hiding that fact. But as much as I want to rip on you, you guys, you are newest members of the Military Family Advisory Committee, and man, you guys done a bunch for us in the time that you've been with us, and have you given us a different perspective. Jimmy, did you shave since the last time I saw you? Like this, did this just happen like within the last 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's just like somebody I know who goes pee really quick. So
I feel like this was not there 5 minutes ago. So
no, you're right.
You've changed up your look within the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So welcome, guys, for being here, and thanks so much for being part of our Military Family Advisory Committee. And you guys bring a tremendously unique perspective, just like everybody else. But you guys bring the perspective of the serving member. Before I ask you questions, do me a favor, both of you. We'll start with Matt, and then we'll go over to James. Tell us about your military experience. Give us a little bit of a nutshell, like what that military experience looked like for you and how you became part of the military.
Can I just be like, go check out episode whatever it was? Because it's like this is my third time, I think, doing this.
Yeah, you have to actually tell us.
In a nutshell, I joined in 2007, served with the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment. I was in Afghanistan for Task Force 308 and medically released in 2012, 13, somewhere around there, something like that.
And Jimmy, tell us about you. You had first of all, actually, Matt, go back to you for 1 second. Why did you join?
Okay. Going back to the whole degenerate thing.
Yeah.
In high school, I wasn't. The way our school system is, I don't think was ideally set up for someone like myself. So I wasn't really engaged, and I was getting into more trouble and stuff than anything. Afghanistan was at the like peak of the conflict. That actually when Jimmy was there for Medusa and stuff is right around when I should have been graduating. And someone else that I knew that was kind of like myself joined and was very successful at it and kind of changed his life. And I was like, maybe that's something that I need to do, get some discipline and kind of do something with myself instead of just being a degen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jimmy, what's your military experience look like?
So just my military experience, joined in 2000. Served with one VP, multiple tours to Afghanistan. Like Maddie was saying, I was there in 04, 06. We stayed for Medusa because it was just an awful tour, and for both things. And then I was medically released. I think medical release was like 2009. So
But
so
you
like
also
I was pretty quick life. I did op Peregrine, fighting the forest fires in Kelowna before we went to Afghanistan, and then once the towers hit, it was all about Afghanistan. So
you were also a military brat, though, so you grew up all across this country.
yeah, so I was gonna say, if you were asking about how I became part of a military family, actually it has nothing to do with my service at all. I was born in Cornwallis, and both my parents are in the military. My father is a retired master warrant officer who served in the airborne, and my mom is a retired chief who served in supply. So um, kind of funny because I watched the episode before, and even when they're talking about girlfriends, I see a lot of rationale with kids. I grew up moving every 2 years, lived like Borden, Pett, London, Moose Jaw, like you name it. I've been there. So I remember what the community was like back then, and it was actually quite good because they didn't have tours per se like Afghanistan, but they had these huge exercises, and people would be gone for like 6 months. My mom included, who by then had separated with my father, so she was a single mother, and she had to go out in the field for like 6 months. So, the community around there, I think that was in when we lived in Petawawa. And so like there was a good community there, like good amount of friends, like of my mom's, who could like help take care of me, and I could stay at their place. So I don't know if it's like that now. I do kind of ask some of my friends who are still in and have families and stuff like that. And it seems a little separated because people don't live as close. There's not that base housing, so to speak, that there used to be. Stuff like that's kind of gone away. But yeah, that was my first experience with the military, was with my mom and growing up as a kid.
I think you brought up a really critical point that at some point we'll have to do an episode on. But the fact that the military family has evolved so much so that they're not on base as much. That perception of like, oh, everybody just lives on base and there's this one tight knit community, and so everybody's there for each other. There is a lot of disbursement now and people living off base, and perhaps that community feel is not always there. So how do we, as an organization, and how do we as a military community continue to create that support for one another? I want to ask you both, because interestingly enough, you weren't necessarily part of the traditional military family when you were first serving. What is it that makes you want to recognize, support, and honor the military family as your role as part of the Military Family Advisory Committee? I'll go back to Matt, and then we'll go back to James.
Okay. For me, there's been a wide range of reasons, but the main one is that I think that I say people, like our society in general, seems to not understand that the military member versus the family member aren't treated equally, aren't viewed equally, I believe is the best way of putting it. So like, say you get released and you've been married in this military culture for 25 years, and then you and your spouse divorce, you're not entitled to the same benefits as the member. You just live that whole life, that lifestyle, and in a split second, your service to this country too, because that's how at least I view it, is that you're serving as well, that it's just gone, and it's kind of like wash your hands. And that's a big part for me. And it's Christmas time right now. On my tour, we lost 3 guys that 2 of them had young kids, and I think about that all the time. Like I don't really like the holidays and stuff because I feel guilty almost getting to watch my kids open presents and stuff, and I'm always thinking about like how their kids are missing their dad because of losing their lives in Afghanistan. And it's very not I guess it's not very easy, but as time goes on, that gets kind of lost on how much of an impact Afghanistan specifically, because I was attached to it, I guess that's my bias is going to that, but the impact that it's had on the families, and it's going to continue for years. And it's, I believe it still needs to be in the forefront. Society moves on quick though, so that's part of why I wanted to make sure that I was a part of this.
Thank you. And Jimmy, what about you? Why is it that you feel that the family needs to be highlighted?
Well, I think very much like Matt said, is when a member is in the military and they're doing their job and they have deployments and they have exercises and all that stuff, it's not only the member who's sacrificing their time and doing that, it's the mother, the you know, the kids at home, you know, the single parent who's there. They're all making sacrifices too. While that person's away, you know, on deployment, let's say, you know, a mother's back there, got to take the kids to soccer, got to do this, got to do that. And also the kids, right? They're separated from a parental unit and gone. And, you know, it's not until they're an old enough age to understand, like, why were you gone for that long, that you know, that leaves the children with a very distinct feeling of like, is my parents like me? Like, it, you know, because of why is he always leaving, or why is he or she always leaving to, you know, to go somewhere. So I think it's ultra important to bridge the gap between the military and military families. I think it should be like a lot closer. It should just be one thing. I know that they try to do it with, you know, they have military days and all these things out there, but really keeps going on. And like Maddie said, there's people right now who I know who have lost a son, right? And I wonder what their Christmas is like, right? And what it's been like for 10 years, you know? And those are the type of people who want to try and help and make sure that they're doing okay, because some of them may not have any more extended family, right? That, you know, they could be just a single mother who had their son who unfortunately, you know, is deceased from a tour, and, you know, those kind of people.
Could I jump back in too? Because something that hit me, was it last week we were engaged down? I'm losing track of time. I think it was last week, yeah. And there was two things from that conversation when we went with 2RCR hotel company, and we sat with them, and discussions around special needs children and the support that they don't get when the service member is in the field or on tour, which is, that to me is just wild to think about, that you're giving so much to the country and you're literally not getting support for someone like anyways, that like kind of boggled my mind. And something else that people don't really think of is, like, when you're away, most people, CEOs or something like that, will go away for maybe a couple weeks or a month at a time, but if there's no danger, no real imminent danger, that's not like something that's on the spouse's mind or the children's mind all the time. And then when that member comes back, they have to reintegrate into that family household. And that alone is a rough challenge. So, you know, like if the wife is, or the husband is used to doing things a certain way in the morning with a routine and stuff like that, then it obviously conflicts with that now that you've been gone for 6 months, and, you know, just insert right back in. And there's just a lot of that awareness that I don't think our society really truly understands.
No, I think you guys are dead on. In the meantime, I'm just getting a message from our CEO, Rick Seymour. We want to give shout out to individuals who are watching from Trenton, from Victoria, Ottawa, Kemptville, Fredericton, Oromocto, and Sudbury. So thanks to everybody for watching. Guys, I want to ask you, why is it that you joined the Military Family Advisory Committee? What is it that you thought that you could bring to the table, and why do you think that this committee plays an important role within an organization like this? And we'll finish off with this because we have Rebecca and we have Susie joining us to close out the evening. We'll go to Matt first.
Why did I join?
Yeah.
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I met Rick first, and then just coincidentally, and if I backed up to before, I used to do some stuff in volunteering and trying to get veterans out of the house and engaged in activity and sport, just doing something healthy. And during that, we kind of recognize that family members should be a part of that as well. And, you know, like if you go out golfing, if say I go to BC and go out golfing, but then I come back to Ontario and there's no one here that I golf with, that's kind of counterproductive to what the whole goal is. So I realized
just to give context, the volunteering that you were doing was reaching veterans and helping veterans through sports.
Yeah, like Soldier On. I started with that, and then started our own not-for-profit as well. And then that's over time realizing like, hey, you know, like who's going to get this veteran out of the house if they're, you know, bunkered down? It's not just going to be themselves kicking their butt out the door, doing something fun in a healthy way. They need some support too, and then realizing that the family needs that recognition as well, or deserves that recognition as well. So I don't know what I can really bring to the table. I guess is just like my experiences.
You got a tremendous amount.
And I forget what the last one was.
It was what, you know, why did you join and what you think you can bring to the table. I'm gonna tell everybody what you bring to the table in 1 minute, but first I want to give Jimmy the opportunity to answer. So Jimmy, what do you think you can bring to the table for this organization in terms of your perspective, and why was it that you felt compelled to join?
I think I bring life experience. I lived it from many different angles with both my parents and myself in. And quite simply, to answer the other question, because everybody counts.
I want to say before I affectionately kick you both off, you know, we were an organization that predominantly focused on the active member and their family for probably 3 years in the running. And we did decide that we wanted to get into the veteran family space, because once you are a military family, you are always a military family, regardless of how long you served and if you are no longer serving. Matt and Jimmy, you have brought tremendous value and tremendous perspective for our organization in terms of the veteran space and how it affects veteran families in terms of what it looks like when you're transitioning out, what the complications of that are, the challenges of that are, and the added value that veterans can bring to the fabric of our country. So thank you both very much for your time today. Thank you both very much for the efforts that you've put into our Military Family Advisory Committee. We are better for it. So thanks for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, lady. Thank you for always helping us and the community. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys. And we have saved, I'm not going to say the best for last because it's going to piss off everybody who's been on the show so far. But Rebecca and Susie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I have looked forward to speaking with you. Susie, you have been with us before on the command post. It's the very first time I met you, actually, when you were a participant of the command post. Rebecca, I think this is your first time, so we are going to be very easy on you tonight and not scare you away so that you do this again. Very first question this evening, I'll go to Rebecca first and Susie next. What does your military family look like?
Oh gosh, that's interesting. So I'm a veteran spouse. We have 3 kids, and my brother also is a veteran, and my aunt and uncle are also both veterans. So yeah, it's funny when I was talking to Rick about being part of a military family, I was like, well, I don't know, because my husband being a reservist, I was like, it didn't always feel like we were a veteran family, but you know, it's the more and more, and as the years have gone by, I really realized, yes, like we really are, our experiences are so different from civilian world. So
why is it, and don't worry, Susie, I haven't forgotten about you. And I should mention that Susie is our Francophone extraordinaire. She keeps us in check when it comes to our Francophone community. And thank God for that, because Rick and I can't speak French to save our lives. It's embarrassing. And that's why we don't do it. We let Susie do it for us. Rebecca, why is it that as a veteran, as a reservist family, why is it that you know, this is a very interesting perspective rather than a Reg Force family. Why is it that you didn't feel, I don't want to use the word validated, but you didn't feel that you deserved the recognition as being part of a military family?
I think it had a lot to do with how we had transitioned out. My husband was medically released, so it wasn't by choice. And I think for a while, there was really like a tier between Reg Force and reservists, and, that really they were part-time militia people that just did it on the side, where really there's so many men and women who give up all their spare time to their country. So, their weekends, their vacation, like their family time, it ends up that they're giving it back in a way that far surpasses any other way that you could give back to your community and give back to your country. So
and yet I would argue that as a reservist family, you sacrificed a tremendous amount. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. It was always hard though, because I think for us it was like, well, yeah, he's in the military, but it's just a reservist, right? It's just like, even we would do that, and that's so wrong. It's not just it's an amazing feat to be doing. It's an amazing contribution. So yeah, I don't know why we did that for so long, but I think maybe being on the other side of it now and looking at it as a veteran, I think that I can really appreciate the amount of time that we gave up as a family, that we gave up. Vacation weekends where I'd be out by myself like all the time with very young kids, right? And then he'd be coming back literally, midnight and going to work at 6 a.m. the next day. Like, it just, yeah.
I think that's why you're such a tremendous part of this Military Family Advisory Committee, because you are helping to change that narrative and that perspective of just reservists, of really validating the role for other reservist families in terms of the sacrifices that they do make. So thank you for that. Susie, talk to us about your military family. What does that look like?
Well, it's funny because I joined the Naval Reserve in '98, and I was just a reservist, and I met my husband, who was just a reservist at the time in Victoria, BC. I joined the reserve to learn English and explore the country, and it was GI Jane, without wanting to say how old I am, but it was all about that. I did shave my head, yes, I did back then, but really, and then my husband transitioned to the Reg Force years later, before he proposed, so that we got married, and yeah, so now we have 2 children. We've moved 8 times in the last 17 years. He deployed a few times, and yeah, so that's how I came about. I guess I joined first. He joined after me, opposite side of the country, and that's how we met. And
I love that. Thank you. And why is it that the two of you feel that the military family deserves to be highlighted and recognized and supported? And has that been the case to date? I'll go back to either one of you. You can play chicken for who goes first.
Well, I do feel, I know from even when I was just, in the reserve, and when my husband was gone, we were on IR for some part of time when he was in the reserve, because we both wanted to have a career, and he was a reservist full-time, and I wasn't. I was only part-time, and basically, I think there's not enough, and that's why when I got to learn about TWS, I was so excited, because it is not an easy, it's not an easy way of life. It's wonderful though. It has amazing, lots of positive, like I'm so thankful of all the experience and various places I've lived and people I've met, but it is not easy. And it's also nice to know there is an organization like Together We Stand that supports the family, that are there, for our typical, very different challenge than sometimes, not always, but sometimes other civilian family do not understand.
Rebecca, what about you? Why is it number one, do you think it exists? And number two, why do you think it's so important to highlight military families?
What exist? Sorry, I
Do you think that recognition for military families exists across this country?
I've seen it definitely change in the last couple of years. I think that in the last few years, there's been more recognition, and I don't know whether it's because there's more natural disasters where it ends up that there's things happening at home where
COVID played a big role in that, right?
Yeah, COVID, like all, flooding in BC, like even, so I'm in Ontario, like up north, right? A couple of years ago, like flooding up north, and the forest fires, like, so there's all these things that are happening. And I think that there's been more of an awareness among the general population being like, wow, like there's people that are gonna come and help me when everyone's leaving, right? Like everyone's leaving and they're coming in. And I think that part of that has had an impact on the recognition side. And I really do. I think that wholeheartedly our military members do need to be recognized, and not just, in November. I think throughout the year, like we need to be talking about the sacrifices, right? That families. Yeah.
I have a question for you, Rebecca. So you made some very interesting points there, and I want to go back to both of you. You talked about the fact that we have had these natural disasters, and we've had COVID, and we've had all these things at the forefront where suddenly the military is starting to be top of mind for individuals. They're in the news a little bit more. They're like, oh my God, I'm starting to understand that aside from the fact that we go overseas and we help abroad, we actually help domestically too. What does that mean though? What's the missing piece? What does that mean in terms of, yes, we had men and women in uniform helping with fires. Yes, we had men in uniform, men and women in uniform helping with floods and with COVID and putting themselves at risk, putting their lives at risk in these situations. What does that mean for their families back at home? What does that look like?
Stress, worry, a lot of anxiety, a lot of questions. Like if you have kids, trying to not just alleviate your own fears, right? But to alleviate theirs. And then your kids are having questions and from their peers. And so you're trying to like make sure that the information that you're giving is correct and age appropriate, right? So it really becomes complicated. Like you end up being this mental health professional that's, not only for yourself, but for all these little people that are running around too. So yeah, it's pretty tricky. Susie, like what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's not always easy to give the outright. I'm an engineer. I like to give details and correct fact. But again, I have young children. Right? They're getting a bit older now, 10 and 12. But, I always try to soak the worry and not give it to them. But I'm not always the best at doing that job, right? Like trying to say, he's fine. He's totally okay. Well, but you're crying because, like the phone hang up. And I mean, he was telling me something. I'm like, I have to tell you. And and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on, right? But I can't do that to them. Like, so I have to, he's okay, just a line cut off. We'll talk to him at another time, right? But yeah, it's the balance of but not saying anything that's wrong. And yeah.
So last question of the evening, because I can't believe we're at the top of the hour already. Why is it that the two of you, I mean, you're busy women, you are fierce women, you have full-time jobs, you have kids. Why is it that you decided that you wanted to commit some of your time to this Military Family Advisory Committee? Why was that important to you? I'll go to Rebecca and then I'll end up with Susie.
Well, it's funny. Rick asked me to join. That was so.
He's very convincing, that guy.
Very convincing. Yeah. You know what? really love advocating for military and veteran families, and TWS really, it has that family component, which I think is so key for success, at least for us. Like it's been that rock that's, you know, held us all together through those trials, through those tribulations, those stormy weather. Like having each other has really been so integral, and having an organization that just provides that little step up, that little bit more help, oh my gosh, I would take it 100% of the time. So yeah, if I can be that one little piece that helps in the organization to help reach that one more family, that one more, you know, military member, like what more can I say? That's it.
Susie?
Similar for me, it's about reaching more people. It's Sarah who brought me on board because we were together at the JCSP in Toronto when our husband were doing that 1 year long. And basically, you know, I did see right away there was more Air Force, there was not a lot of Navy people, and there was no Francophone. And not to say, you know, but I just, for me, and I'm hoping I want to reach more of my friends. My friends sometimes they watch the comment and say, "Wow, it's all in English," but we're working on it. We're translating. We're gonna put subtitle. We're gonna put subtitle to some of those great shows that you've done, Stephanie, and really it's to reach them out, for them to feel part of this community. That's amazing. Like I just think it's an amazing community, and I feel very thankful and lucky that I'm part of this family community, the foundation, and that's why I want it to become aware for the Francophone community and everyone else. Yeah.
And you really have. I mean, I love to say that every single individual on our Military Family Advisory Committee brings such a unique perspective. Really, you know, Rebecca, you're bringing on that veteran family perspective, that reserve family perspective. Susie, you're bringing on that Navy family perspective, that Francophone perspective. We really strive here to make sure that when we're making decisions, we're not making decisions in a bubble. We're really trying to understand how is this going to play out across the entire military community. And you guys are our very best teachers, our very best advisors. We thank you all, but you're the last two people, so I'm going to give you the most thanks. We'll give you the most credit right now. Rebecca and Susie, you guys have been a tremendous part of this Military Family Advisory Committee. We sincerely couldn't do it without you. Our Military Family Advisory Committee, we are a family at this point. We are a family first organization, so we put our families first, but we make each other family, and it's really a blessing to be able to do this work with you. So thank you both for being here with me today. Thank you those who are at home watching with us. We wish you all a very happy the rest of 2021. For those of you who are having a difficult 2021, like the rest of the entire world, good riddance to the rest of this year. 2022 should only bring good things, and we will see you back here in January for an all-new episode of The Command Post. Thanks, everybody, and have a great evening. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Stephanie. You're awesome as always. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Bye, Rebecca. Bye, Susie.
Bye.